You got a lot of family support, but you can't run around the country telling people not to file income tax returns. At the IRS, I was told that we were collecting the tax and doing our duty, as federal employees to collect the right amount of tax. When I left the IRS, I started being approached by a lot of people that said, hey, the income tax is being misrepresented and misapplied to the American people. Eventually, I did the research and found out that they were telling the truth and that our resources are being stolen by the government.
So why did you leave the IRS? How did that end up? Just retired?
I left the IRS for family reasons. I was promoted and moving up in rank in the IRS, and I'm a family person. They were taking too much of my time away from my family, so I decided to leave. I was already a CPA, so I said I'll do a CPA firm from home and take better care of my family. That's when people stopped being afraid to talk to me about the taxation.
So what happens next? Tell me the story. What goes on?
So many different people started talking to me about the taxation being misrepresented or being a fraud. And I eventually researched it because someone brought to my attention a USA Today article. It was 2000. It was summer of 2000. And it was put out by We the People Foundation for Constitutional Education. And it said, "Dear We the People, the income tax is a fraud." But also within the body of that USA Today ad was a $50,000 reward from a man named William Conklin. And Bill Conklin asked anybody that could prove that most Americans that live and work in the 50 states had to file an income tax return or was required to pay. So at that point I decided, I've been hearing all these people and I want to go ahead and do the research. Actually, I wanted to win that 50 grand.
Okay.
So I still had my codes and regulations from when I left the IRS. And I started doing the research, and then weeks went by, and then months went by, and I realized it's really hard here. Why is it so hard for me to just come out and show in the codes and regulations that the people have to pay the tax? And the conclusion that I came to was there's no law. There's a lot behind that, but there's no law. One of the largest things that people don't understand that talks about, if you have this taxable income or this gross income, but there's no definition of income in the Internal Revenue Code. So once the research was done, the definition of income turned out to be corporate profit. And so that's why some people say they've tried to make us out of corporations. But when I cut your grass, let's say you paid me $100 to cut your grass. So I use my mind and my arms and my legs to cut your grass. That's an even exchange. I exchange my time and my talents and my energy for resources that will help me to survive. That's not taxable. It should not be taxable. You take, for example, a large department store and it makes $100,000 in a day. It gets to deduct the rent from the building, the salaries that it paid, the utilities and all that. And at the end of the day, if they had $80,000 in expenses, they are taxed on only $20,000. They're taxed on the corporate profit. So we are getting screwed over. And one of the things that resounded in my head, and I saw this poster, and I actually have this poster posted in my office, in my home office. It says, if stealing 100% of the product of someone's labor is slavery, at what percentage is it not slavery? So it doesn't matter whether you're black, white, green, purple, or blue with polka dots, you are a slave. And my people have already been through slavery. I don't want to go through slavery again. But I realized at that point that I'm still a slave. And most Americans are. But there's so much information out there and there's so much distraction out there. But the biggest thing that's out there, there's so much fear out there. And when you talk to people about their rights and their liberties and all that, they would rather stay in the matrix and choke on the blue pill, because they're too afraid to deal with the government. They don't want to rock the boat, and they want to stay in their comfort zone. They want to stay in their circle of sameness, and you have to leave them there. But for those that want freedom, God gave us unalienable rights, not inalienable rights, unalienable rights. That means that we have rights that can't be leaned by anybody. We have the right to life, liberty, and a pursuit of happiness. And they've been taken away by the various governments, not just in the United States, but around the world. And I've met so many people here from different places all across the globe, but everybody wants the same thing. Everybody wants freedom. And we want freedom from government, freedom from taxation, freedom from people taking what belongs to us,
making laws and giving it to somebody else.
You were talking about staying in the matrix, but I mean, what happened to you? Didn't they throw you in the can?
Well, yes. When I had a choice when I started doing this research. So I went down the rabbit hole of the taxation, which led me to another rabbit hole called the Federal Reserve. I was given Ed Griffin's book called The Creature from Jekyll Island. It's a very thick book, but I couldn't put the book down. And I was so appalled at what happened and how we got into this mess by the wealthy banking families. When I finished reading The Creature from Jekyll Island, I had one of those turning points, that crossing the Rubicon turning point, because I said, I worked hard. I had a system where I would work sometimes even 16 hours a day, trying to make ends meet for my family and then have a nice life, go on nice vacations, go to Mexico and Venezuela and Jamaica and places like that. But in order to do that, you're working hours and hours. But I realized when the Federal Reserve isn't federal and all this money, millions of dollars in interest is being collected from the American people, the IRS are the bouncers for the Federal Reserve Club, and they're taking this money. So at the end of the year or in tax season, for my CPA firm to have to write a check for $15,000 or $20,000, it wasn't going towards fixing the roads because the gas tax took care of that. It wasn't going towards helping pay the policemen and the teachers because the real estate taxes paid for that. Well, where was all this money going? It's going towards the Federal Reserve, the debt. You can go out online and look at that debt clock, and it's ticking crazy. And your children are born at least $50,000 in debt as we speak because of the Federal Reserve interest. So why do they have authority over us? Well, the Congress gave them the authority. They gave the Federal Reserve authority over us to collect this money. So these wealthy banking families, their children's children will never have to work a day in their life. And I'm sitting here slaving at my desk, trying to stay awake to get all these audit reports done so my family can make ends meet. And I just had that thing where I said, no, I'm not doing it. So I actually stopped filing tax returns. This was 2000. So by the time 2004 rolled along, I hadn't filed any taxes and I was speaking out. Me and Joe Bannister and some other former IRS agents and others were speaking out. We weren't telling people to file or not to file. We weren't telling people to pay or not to pay. We were telling people to do their own research, do your due diligence, and decide whether you want to be a slave or get off the plantation. So they started hating us. And in 2004, they came in the summertime and raided my home. They came in armed. 15 to 20 agents had laser tag on my head, opened the door, federal agents come in. They came in and swarmed the house, and they were there from 7:45 in the morning until 5 o'clock. And they took away like 32 boxes, and this was 2004. And they went through those boxes and they started interviewing people. And by 2007, they couldn't find a felony. They found a homeschooling family that was just trying to live their life. So they decided that I was still too much of a big mouth, and they brought charges against me on a misdemeanor. So you can't indict. The indictment is for felony. So they brought an information. And information is when you're bringing charges, misdemeanor charges against someone. So for 4 years, 2000 to 2003, they brought charges of willful failure to file tax returns, which is a misdemeanor. They took me to court. They wouldn't let me talk about the law. They wouldn't let me talk about the experiences that I had going to Congress and asking the Congress people. And they wouldn't let me talk about the Supreme Court cases and the state Supreme Court cases that were researched to show that the resources that we earn are not taxable. So, and the jury was so afraid that they might be audited that they immediately came back with a guilty. So I was found guilty of the misdemeanor of willful failure to file. I was given 4-year sentence, not concurrent, consecutive, 4 consecutive years. And of course, most people know that some felons don't even get a 4-year sentence. I ended up serving 3 of those years in a federal prison. I got 6 months off for good time. I got 6 months off for halfway house. But I lost 3 years of my life in a federal prison because I dared to come out and say that you all need to figure out what you want to do for your own self and your family, because all of us are slaves. One of the other things about this issue of taxation being slavery, it's a racially unifying issue. And I think they were also afraid of that, because it doesn't matter what color you are. People were coming together from all walks of life saying, wait a minute, I need to check this out. And that scared them also. And during the sentencing, the judge looked at me and she said to me, in her southern voice. I know you homeschool your children, Miss Jackson, and I know you got a lot of family support, but you can't run around the country telling people not to file income tax returns. And I looked dead in her face and I said, I've never done that, because I never did. So that told me and everybody else that this wasn't about the fact that I chose to keep what I earned. It was about the fact that I was running around telling people to look and do your research, and bringing people together from all walks of life, saying that we're all being made sheeple and we're all being corralled in a sheeple corral and we need to get out.
There's a lot of issues out there that they seem to wrap race into to keep people from actually looking at the facts and keep them emotionally charged in the wrong direction, if I'm describing that correctly.
Do
Yes.
you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, the enemy's MO has always been divide and conquer. Go back to, what is his name, Sun Tzu, always has been divide and conquer. So if they can divide us by race, you're white, I'm black. Or religion, I'm a Christian, you a Jew, or you a Muslim. They just keep that going, and they keep that in the media. And what they do is they keep us focused on that, and they keep us away from what they're doing behind the scenes. So it's a division that is a false division, because we all have the same color blood. We all have the same color blood. And when we realize that they are the ones that are causing this division in the mainstream media, the main scheme media, and we stop paying attention to that and go to alternative media and start reading books, then we'll start getting together. We'll stop trying to fight each other on these political issues or these racial issues and say, wait a minute, if we keep paying attention to fighting each other, pretty soon we're going to be locked up in a sheeple corral and we won't be able to get out. I'm not saying don't entertain yourself. You know, you work hard. Everybody works hard. You need some kind of entertainment, but don't spend so much time entertaining yourself. Don't come home from work and sit in front of the television and watch it until it watches you, because you're putting your time and energy into somebody else getting rich. You need resources to set yourself and your family up to live free. It's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be cheap, and it's not going to be free. Nobody's going to bring the unicorns and bring you the free stuff. Then there are no trees out there being planted that grow money. You got to do this on your own. I don't care what any politician tells you. If it was going to happen, it would have happened decades ago. But the Democrats and the Republicans, they're sleeping in the same bed and they're raping us all. So get your mind off politics, get your mind on your family, and start doing the things that are going to make your family thrive. I'm working on that right now with my family. I have a 5-year-old granddaughter. My 5-year-old granddaughter has a passport. If you don't have a passport, shame on you. Because when the excrement hits the portable cooling device, you need to be able to go somewhere else. You can't have all your eggs in one basket. These are things that sound simple to a lot of people, but a lot of people never heard of this because they're concentrating on whatever those shows are on television and whatever is going on with the football games and all of that stuff. And still, until Tom Brady starts stroking me a check, my team is the Jackson team. I call the IRS the insidious representatives of Satan. So they represent the corporatocracy. The government, the banksters, and the corporations work together. And, you know, if you notice, the people that leave the government, they go straight into the corporations or to the banks, and it's just a revolving door. Well, they're out there to collect funds from mostly the middle class, because if you notice, corporations don't pay taxes, and a lot of times the corporate owners and the CEOs don't pay tax. They make a lot of money, they don't pay tax. So in the election where Hillary Clinton and Trump, Hillary said, Donald Trump didn't pay his taxes. And everybody said, and they sucked all the air out of the room and they started running to me. Did you hear? See there? That's why he doesn't need to be president. He didn't pay his taxes. And I automatically knew, you know, he said he was a smart man. He used net operating losses. The tax code is set up for people that have businesses. Everybody out there needs to get a legitimate home-based business, and you'll be able to write off stuff, and you may reduce or even eliminate your taxes, but that's not what they're paying attention to. So yes, the IRS has to understand what the tax code says about businesses, and people take advantage of it. A lot of people here have told me, yes, I'm a business owner, And what I do is I help people to reduce the amount of tax, not trying to cut the head off the beast like I did and just say, I'm not paying because it's mine. That got me locked up. I don't want anybody to ever have to go through what I went through. Nobody, ever. So 99% of the people in most countries are not going to come up against the government or come up against their form of IRS like I did, but they are willing to starve the beast by learning ways to work within the system to reduce or eliminate taxes.
Give us the top three simple things people can do to move their way towards out of slavery.
Out of slavery. Get out of debt, get out of debt, get out of debt. That's number one. Number two, start a business and start writing off things that you already pay money for, but you can't write off. If you have a cell phone, if you have just a job, you can't write off your cell phone, but when you have a business, you can write off your cell phone and your internet and things like that. And third, take the money that you start earning, whether you get a tax refund or an inheritance or whatever, don't go buy a new car with that. Don't go to the mall and buy a whole bunch of clothes and stuff like that. Invest that money in hard assets. And what I mean by hard assets is things that won't disappear with a blink of an eye. You've got silver, you've got gold, you got crypto, you got real estate, all these things. People that make money invest their money. They don't wear it on their backs, they don't drive it. This country, at least the United States, was set up as a constitutional republic. And one of the founding fathers said to someone who was asking, what kind of government did you all make? And he said, it's a republic if you can keep it. And so that hasn't happened. Through greed and avarice, the system has made certain people above other people. With certain laws being put in place by certain people, they've gotten really, really rich. And then there are other people that are really, really poor and uneducated. And I'm not talking about education in the government schools. I'm talking about education about life, learning how to read, write, do math, critical thinking. Wisdom, strategic thinking. So if you grew up in a family, like a lot of my family members or my great-great-grandparents that weren't allowed to read and weren't allowed to do certain things, then you got to jump ahead. You're behind by 100 yards and you got to catch up. Well, some people have the incentive to catch up, but some people want to stay back there and, be the victim. I don't like the victim thing. I like being a victor. So what we have to do is we have to move forward. This country is like Rome. Rome fell from within. I don't know how long it's going to take, but $23 trillion in debt is not sustainable. Q1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 18, 20 is not going to work. So kicking the can down the road has been working, but what's going to happen is there is a dead end coming. So we don't know what's going to happen, but we know it's going to happen. So people need to start preparing however they're going to prepare for their families, for their future. It's not going to work. Democracy as it has failed us. The constitutional republic really never did get sprouted because people got greedy and decided, let's make these laws. Let's be able to take this money from these people and utilize it and give it to these people and pacify these other people by giving them stuff so they'll vote for us again next year.
So what's next? What's coming down the road?
What's coming down the road is going to be probably an economic collapse. And I don't know how long. Some people are saying 18 months. Some people are saying 3 years. I don't know. But what I do know is people need to start getting prepared. You can't, using the Hurricane Katrina for an example, that hurricane that hit New Orleans, everybody and their grandmother knew that hurricane was coming. Everybody knew. Certain people said, okay, I think I need to pack up. I need to board up my windows and I need to go to my relatives in Seattle. A lot of people did that. Those are the people who had, some forewarning and common sense. Then there were people that waited till the last minute and they got out at the last minute.
Got stuck in a Superdome.
Well, no, those are the people who did not move. You know why? Because they had not had their resources in place to go anywhere. These are the people that were very, very poor. Some of them were on government assistance and some of them didn't have vehicles. They're used to public transportation. And yes, they got stuck in the Superdome. The people that have any sense right now are doing something about it. The United States is losing 300,000 people every year These people are expatriating. They are giving up their U.S. citizenship. United States is having what we call a brain drain. Pay attention. The people that have wherewithal are at least getting residency somewhere else, if not leaving and giving up U.S. citizenship altogether, because they see what's coming down the road. And when that excrement finally hits the portable cooling device, they will be elsewhere looking back at the people who got left in the proverbial Superdome.
So what are you doing? Are you trying to get out of the States? What do you?
I have some property in Costa Rica, in the process on the East Coast, just like what we learned about, it's not very developed. They don't have Hiltons, they don't have Hyatts.
I've been over there.
Don't have, okay, so
Is Limon
near Limon, between Limon and Puerto Viejo. And, my family will have some place to go when the wheels come off. We won't starve to death because, of course, there's food on all the trees. We won't freeze to death because it's nice and warm. We might get a little hot sometimes. And we'll be able to have resources come in for those who are still able to travel. They'll be able to visit and vacation there. So I am preparing. Most people here are in the mode of preparing. Some people are already prepared. That's great. And it's great. In this place, those that are prepared are helping the other ones because they want to be able to help other people. And it's not often that people that are preparing or prepared get with other people that want to do the same thing. You kind of have to keep your mouth closed a lot of times when you're at home because they're talking about who won the basketball game or those kinds of things. You keep quiet and you smile. But when you get around like-minded people, you share ideas, you learn new things, and we all move forward together. Stop staying in your circle of sameness. Stop choking on the blue pill. Take the red pill. It's a little scary, but we cannot live in fear. We cannot live in fear. Fear is false evidence appearing real, and it's not real. If you stay there and continue to be subservient and continue to be a slave, then you're not going to get anywhere. You might be comfortable for a while, but eventually it's all going to crash. And where are you going to be if you haven't prepared? I'm not going to be there. Most of the people that are here are not going to be around. We're going to be somewhere prepared and moving on with our families. So you do the same.
Do you think that a lot of those programs that basically just remove the father from the home, turn the government into the father, do you think that was done initially as like, oh, we want to help people, or do you think it was nefarious from the get?
It was nefarious from the get. There's a guy named Daniel Patrick Moynihan. He wrote a report back then that said, hey, what's going to happen if you put these programs together? You're going to destroy the black family because you're taking the man out of the household. You're making it impossible for them to get money unless the man is out of the household. And people blasted him for that. But guess what? It was true. And he knew it was true. And guess what? The people that put it together knew it was true. He was just one of the only people that was willing to come out and say, hey, we shouldn't be doing this. And yes, it did. That whole welfare system and all that socialism and public assistance was one of the worst things that ever happened to black people and poor people. Because you don't want to have a situation where the family is broken up. When the family is destroyed, then all the morals are gone, and then you get what you have now. So we've gotten what we quote unquote paid for in the United States because of all of this public assistance and socialism and all that. My parents grew up during this time, but their parents, my grandparents, grew up during the time where people helped people. If somebody didn't have food, the families down the street rallied together and they had food. And then if my grandparents, and my grandfather told me this, sometimes they didn't have food, but he said he would never take public assistance. He said if they had to eat a grain of rice a day, then they were not going to do that because he knew that it was a destroyer. So yes, I totally 100% agree that it was all by design. It was nefarious and it did what it was intended to do. It broke up the family. And we've got all these situations where you've got a whole bunch of people that don't know their fathers. And that's one way out of many to keep people divided, keep them in the sheep corral, and keep them down. Very few people do you see come out of that poverty and make something of themselves and are able to turn around and help others. Unless they're playing sports. I have a book called How to Escape the Rat Race, 4 Keys to Acquire the Life of Your Dreams. And it goes deeply into what I talked about getting out of debt and getting a business and that kind of thing. Also have a book called How to Stick It to the IRS. And that book helps people not be afraid of the IRS, because once you start pulling yourself up out of poverty and out of the lower middle class, then you have these resources. First things first, do with the resources what wealthy people do. They invest and they get wealthier, as opposed to going out and buy. How is it that when I talk to people, they start this business, their business is finally, up and running, and they're getting some income, and then I see them driving around in a new Lexus. And then it just really bothers me, because that's not what it's for. It's not for you to wear on your back, or it's not for you to drive around. It's for you to reinvest. Go get you some property, go get you some silver, go get you some gold, go get you some cryptocurrency, so that you'll have something when everything crashes. That car's not going to help you when everything crashes. Those clothes that you got from, needless markup, they're not going to help you when everything crashes.